across. Give me a sec. I am sharing my screen. I need to move. Just a sec. Let me just click there and try to share again. Yep. You can see my screen, guys?
Yes, sir.
Sure. Cool, guys. Thank you very much for, first of all, the opportunity to speak among you. It's very nice to be here, speaking with college kids. I have been out of college for the last 6 years. So, yeah, pretty fun. So, the topic that we internally decided for you guys to have specifically on the eve of the innovation challenge that is currently going on, which is sponsored by MHRD, which is that basically how do you make great products that people love, that users love and adore. My name is Shravan. Just a quick introduction about myself. I work as a lead product manager for Byju. I've been in product management for the last 5.5 years, worked on multiple products. I'm a graduate of IIT Roorkee, 2015 pass out. Since then, I've worked across multiple products. I worked with some companies in the e-commerce space, which is Flipkart, some companies in the transportation space, which is Blackbuck. It is like the Uber for trucks. Post that, I have worked with some companies on the streaming side. I worked with Ghana.com, I worked with magicbricks.com, and the last 2.5 years have been specifically in education, which is the last company that I was working for, leading a business for them was Edureka. Edureka is like the parallel of NPTEL that you can think, and currently I work in Byju, where I build products for children. Yeah, that's a quick, very small snippet about me. So moving ahead, yes. So how I want to structure the presentation is, first of all, I will take 30, 40 odd minutes to run you through the core concepts of building a product. How do you build it across? I know it's not going to be exhaustive, but it's still going to be in such a way that you will get the basic gist of things. And then the last 20 minutes, I'll keep for any doubts, any questions. And I would ideally want the session to be interactive. So feel free to ask whatever the doubt is, whether it's pertaining to the session, whether it's something else. I would love to answer if I can. Yeah. So if everybody's on the same page, I would just get a sense of yes from you guys. Just send across a yes and I would start. Yeah. Cool. Thank you very much. So yaar, sabse pehle, the first thing, what is a product? If you see the sides of the presentation, I've tried to do on the left-hand side, the very core fundamental questions that what is a product, what does a product manager do, what is unique to products that they succeed, and on the right-hand side, I've tried to answer them. So a product is something which basically solves a user problem, but does it at scale. The difference between, so you must have seen in your life that you would have solved some problems in an IT, in your college, at your home, anywhere, any user pain point. Like if you want to get milk, you go to a shop, you solve a user problem. You bring, but are you doing that at scale? That is what really differentiates a product. Let me give you another example about that. So think of it like this. 15 years long back, when you used to do a train ticket, you used to go to a station, your father would go to a station, your mother would go to a station, they would stand in a queue, and it was a cumbersome and a very tiresome process. Somebody in the 2000s did something, started realized that there is internet that's coming in and everything can be digital. They started creating a website called IRCTC, and you can do the same experience on a single website without even leaving your home. So he built a website which kind of solved the problem of those particular users at scale. What I mean by at scale is it's currently used by millions of users. So initially they would have started with 1,000 users, 10,000 users, and they would have gradually scaled. But the only difference where you move from a project to a product is that problems, if they are consistently solved at scale by a solution or service, whatever you think of, and gives you a 10x better value, that is a product. Similarly, I've mentioned about the IRCTC kind of a thing. Now, that's the first part. Okay, so you understood that the project is something that you do that is not really that's pertaining to a few people, like a BTP project that you do in 4th year. But a product is something that if you can take that up and can solve it for 10,000 people, 1 lakh people, or something for the entire NIT, like you're using WebEx. WebEx is a common tool which kind of helps you video conference across the board wherever you are. So it's a product that is solving problems. The second question is, what is a product manager, or specifically, what is the products, or what do you think as an innovator, what do they do? A product manager is someone who focuses on that user problem and tries to build that service so that you can address that customer pain point in a 10x scalable way. So what I mean by that is, let's assume you want to get to from your campus from one place to another place. You take a cycle and you go there. But on the contrary, you would have seen rickshaws now in campus. They take 5 people together and take from one place to another in a very smoother manner. So there would have been a guy who would have conceptualized the design of the transportation vehicle, that it should be environmental friendly, it should ascribe to the regulations of the campus, and it should be able to do what a cycle is doing in 10x better way. So logically, that is what would have conceptualized by someone, and you can call that person a product manager. Product manager doesn't necessarily mean building a product in the web space. It can be anything. It can be any solver of a problem, but trying to do that in a 10x better way and also at scale. So that is what a product manager does. Like another example that I've given you, like what you used to do early, if you have to do a computation, you used to take a calculator, would try to calculate a certain thing. But what did Excel do for you? Excel specifically brought you a tool in which you can mention is equal to ABCDE into EFGHI, and you get the solution then and there. So there was a product manager who really thought of that feature and built that feature in that software and kind of solved the user problem. So that is what a product manager does. Now, the third question you would ask, okay, why do certain products succeed and why do certain fail? There are zillions of products in the market, but there are only few products which you remember. So what is unique to great products that they succeed? Generally, great products are built on 3 core values. 1, they should have significant differentiation in terms of the way a problem is solved. What I mean by that is, tomorrow, if there is a company, they try to build a seat belt in a better way. Is your current seat belt not solving that problem? It is. But if somebody tries to make it a better seat belt or makes it more stronger, it doesn't necessarily differentiate a lot of things. But on the contrary, if you look at the value that Ola or Uber brought, earlier, whenever you used to take a taxi, you used to go outside, you had to find the taxi, then there would be haggling that people would say, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm not doing. What is the price? The price would not be standardized. But Ola and Uber came and they solved the problem of availability and price at scale. And that was what was unique to them. That's the first part. So the product has to be very, very unique in terms of value. The second part is it should be simple to use. Okay, if I tell you, let's assume there's a calculator which has like 30, 40 odd buttons and every button has a separate function. It is very difficult for you to really understand that what a button does. But if I give you a calculator with only 6 odd buttons, one does a square, one does a root, one does addition, one does subtraction, it's fairly easy to use because a great product's learning curve is very, 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 very simple. Something like using an iPhone. That's the second part. The third part is that the product in its utility only should be fun. What I mean by that is, tomorrow, why do you like a phone like Apple? Why do you necessarily, every phone does the same thing in a utilitarian manner. What I mean by that is you can take calls, you can do SMSs, you can do WhatsApp, everything is the same. But once you use an iPhone, you see the experience, you see the aesthetic appeal, you see the simplicity of experience. That is very, very cool. So if a product brings you joy also while using it, it's amazing. Another example to that is whenever there is internet is off, Chrome allows you to functionally play a game. That is also another part. So they don't want the user to get disengaged and have fun while using the product. So these are the 3 core things which make a product unique to succeed. So moving ahead to the next slide. Yep. So the next question that you should ideally, guys, you should ask is, what are the core aspects of a product funnel? What is a product funnel and how do you start building it? So in a very simplistic way, what I mean by a product funnel is it has 5 different parts, and I will speak about them very, very briefly. The first part is whenever you build a product, how are you going to get users who can use it? Another example of that is, let's assume you want to see that the notes, you might have built notes for your website, for your exams, and you want people to see that whether those notes are relevant or not, and they can help other people or not. So what you will do is you'll go into your class, you will send it to a common WhatsApp group, and the people will spread it across. So that is the user acquisition. The first part is getting users to use your product. The second part is, okay, if they're using your product, are they deriving value from it? What I mean by that is, okay, are they actually reading the notes? That's the second part. If they're actually reading the notes and they find value, then comes the third part, retention. The next time also they'll come to you. ऐसा होता है ना, whenever there is an exam, if there is a topper who kind of makes notes, everybody goes to the same person again and again after in the next midterm or the next coming term, that dude, you must have good notes, why don't you give it to me? That is the third part, the retention part. The fourth part is the referral part. Referral basically means, okay, dude, that guy is a topper and he makes great notes, so why don't you take it from him, get it copied there? So you try to refer to bring more and more people to derive value for that product or project, whatever you're doing. And the fifth part is typically not relevant here, but I would say that in a company, because if you are building a company, it is typically relevant to more commercial products. It is the part that whether people will pay for it or not. It even valuable for education products. Like I work for Byju, we build for kids, but if we don't make money out of it, how will the company survive? So typically there are 5 stages to build a product. The first is getting users to use it. Second, identifying whether they are deriving value from it. Third, that whether they will consistently derive value from it. Fourth, that whether they will, through their word of mouth, will bring more users to use it. And the fifth part is whether if this value is really relevant, will you pay for it? That is the 5 parts. So this is typically how you see a product funnel, starting from one part. I will go into deeper details coming on, but just to give you an overall gist that this is how you look at a product. Yeah. The third part. Okay. What does a great product focus on? I already spoke about the 3 points, but I've kind of gotten into more detail. The first part is core user value to the pain point a user has. Let me give you another example. So assume you had to buy Kashmiri embroidery, which is very popular for your mom. Now, before Flipkart, what used to happen? You used to go out and you used to figure out in your city that is there a shop which sells Kashmiri embroidery? Then you used to think, okay, is it authentic or not? Is he giving me the right price? Is he not doing all of those stuff? But when Flipkart came, you don't have to do anything. You have to go on website. You have to look for Kashmiri embroidery. You would look at the reviews and you would buy it. As simple as that. So they solved the user point that necessarily that you don't have to put effort to get that value. That's the first part. The second part is simplicity of experience. Again, how simple it is to use a phone. The only difference the beautiful part about using an iPhone and any other phone is that typically whenever you buy a Redmi phone or a different phone, it takes you a day to get accustomed to it. Like, how do I use all the features? How do I do stuff? But in an iPhone, it takes you like 30 odd minutes to figure out what the phone does. That's as smooth the experience of the phone is. Similarly, if you go to a website like Make My Trip, it's as simple as that. You go there, you know that the website has a simple UI which shows, okay, the only thing that I can do here is book a flight ticket. And it's as simple as that. So people don't have to necessarily go through an onboarding process to understand, okay, this is how I want to use the product. And the third part is element of joy. Again, so one of the products that I really, really like who has solved this problem is this product called Duolingo. I would recommend all of you kids to specifically, or of you students to kind of go through this product. This is an insanely amazing product for language learning. What they have tied is that the feedback of the element of joy. What I mean by that is, let's assume tomorrow, if you do well in an exam and people give you consistently positive feedback, dude, you did well, you did amazing, oh my God, it's great. So what will happen is you get a lot of confidence. So that element, and you get happy while doing the same thing. So in the subjects where you succeed, where there is an element of gratification, you try to study them more. But the subjects which seem boring to you, where you don't find any value, you don't use them. So this is the same way a product is built. You have to give the user that element of joy, the element of happiness to make it a great product. It is the same 3 parts that I was currently kind of talking about. The next part is, okay, now the question is very simple, that you have told me about, okay, what's a great product? How do you do this? What is the value? But how do you start? But it's a very simple question. Like, sir, ye sari cheezein to theoretical hain. These are all theoretical things. How do I actually start building a product? So it's a very, very simple way. First of all, if you really want to move towards a product, first of all, at the very core, what you have to first identify is a user problem. Is there a problem which I can solve, which I can relate to? The problem can be as simple like, okay, my train ticket didn't get booked. What do I do about it? So you typically do Tatkal and stuff and whatever and whatnot. So the first thing that you have to really identify is there a problem which I can relate to? In education space, it can be as simple as that. Okay, Are there enough notes in my college for my entire batch to study from and score well? That's a problem because there are never enough notes. At least in my time, there were never enough notes, and we used to scramble here and there to find the right kind of notes, right? So that's the first part. Once you have a problem and you know that this is a strong problem, you move out from your circle of influence. Because what I mean by circle of influence is you might have 4 or 5 friends who are always with you. Those people will typically reinforce the thought, yes, there is a problem, but you don't have to take feedback from them. Go out, talk to 50 odd people in the same target segment. What I mean by the target segment is the people who can relate to your problem. What I mean by, yeah, like your batchmates, the batchmates who are not your friends, who are from a different branch, go and ask them the very same question. Okay, dude, I am thinking that there are not enough notes, or there is not a common place where we get enough notes. If there would have been a website about it, would you use it? So they'll tell you, yeah, man, it makes sense. Yeah, it should be amazing, but it should have this, it should have that. They'll give you a lot of feedback around it. But if 70% of the people tell you, right, okay, yes, there is a need for it, then the second part comes into play where you understand, okay, there is a demand, there is a problem, there is a demand. The third part is that you do a very small mock exercise of it. Like, okay, how do I want to solve the problem? There can be multi-way. Now you know there's a problem, there's a demand for that problem. Now the third part is finding the solution to the problem. So they can be done it multiple ways. You can simply make a WhatsApp group and say, tell some 4 or 5 of your friends who are good students to put across their notes. That can be one solution. There can be another solution that you make a website and say, okay, you can use this website and I will upload all the documents there. Why don't you just download it from there? Once you have some sort of an initial POC, what you proof of concept, it can be some mocks that you make on a page. You can tell them that I'm making this website. Does this website make sense to you? Then those people will say, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Then you define the next part of product building, which is you defining metrics. What are the metrics through which you can measure the success of the product? You can talk about okay, if out of 100 people who visit my website, 70 people end up downloading the notes, that's a positive metric for me. So the metric is that 70% of people actually come to my website and download the notes. There can be another metric. How many people actually read the notes? It can be 80% of the people. Okay. And then you define that kind of a metric and you say, okay, if this metric grows over a certain number, like if you make a website and you see only 5 people downloading the notes, what's the point of even making the website at the first place? But if you see that number is greater than 50%, that makes a lot of sense. Then you have an initial prototype of the product. Then you move towards, okay, what is in terms of, then you typically go to the circle of influence, say, okay, now these things are doing, what more can I do? And you will also start getting a lot of feedback. Hey, dude, ye bhi hona chahiye. This button should also be there. We should have a functionality to get a PNG of this or a PDF of this. Can you build that? You keep on consistently take feedback, think more and more new features, and finally you reach to a point where your product becomes stable, where most of the features are there, people are happy using it, and that is what you call product market fit. Like you had a prototype, you consistently took feedback, iterated it, took it to a point where multiple people have started using it, and now it has achieved a significance that everybody thinks, okay, if you have to go to notes, go to www.shravannotes.com, and there you can download all the notes. When all of the people derive value that way, then you achieve product market fit. Product market fit is also known, it's the degree to which a product satisfies a strong market demand, as I told you about. Yeah. So in between, just if there is any doubt, I would just take 30 seconds, something relevant till now. Feel free to ask. I would just stop for like 30 odd seconds and then I will move ahead. Anyone feel free to have a doubt if there is no doubt. So then I would feel that probably I'm not doing a good job or doing a good job. Either ways. Yeah. Cool. So I take it that most of you guys don't have a doubt. Okay. The next question is that you told us, how do you start off building a great product? How do I build a great product for education? This is the core agenda. The innovation challenge is about the same thing. So education as a vertical has been growing very fast because of as and when there is more internet access, and also due to Corona, obviously, because you guys are sitting and doing a WebEx webinar. Earlier, you would have called people to your college and they would have done it. So what you can fundamentally look at is that if you want to build products for kids, सबसे पहले तो ये देखो कि what vertical is there which is very big, which can solve a problem at a very large scale. There can be multiple verticals. It can be K-12. K-12 is a vertical which means for kids from first grade to 12th grade. Okay, is that the place where you want to solve a problem for? Or you want to solve it for college grads? Or you want to solve it for professionals? If you feel, okay, I can relate to the K-12 problem more and it's a very big area, the size of the market is big, why don't I take that place? Then, once you've identified the market, then you come down to the problem. Okay, now, what are the problems in that market? Like in the K-12 segment, it can be there is not kind of structured content so that people can study and prepare for exams. It can be retention. It can be the fact that, okay, people are reading notes, but they're not remembering anything. How do I solve that problem? Then you move to the third part. Again, if you have identified the problem, move out of your circle of influence, get feedback, and then once you gain feedback, you work, and the next steps that I've already told you, the same steps. The only difference here is that you first identify a market, and in the market, you try to identify multiple problems. Okay, what are the problems there? And if you find one problem which you can very relate to and you see, yaar, ye to hota hi hai, yaar, this is a problem, is a common across problem at all the places. So let me just try to solve it. That is the exact same. It is the same method I told you. First, a pain point, but only catered to a particular type of vertical. Moving ahead. Yeah. So the next step is what steps you take to start. Identify the problem. I told you. Identify the problem. So I will give you a problem statement, which I kind of talked about. The problem statement, what I was thinking for you guys is that in college yahi hota hai ki notes are not available, and can you build a common website where all lectures of your teachers are available or recordings are available? And typically colleges have this website. In my time in college, there was something called Channel I that IIT had kind of created. I think at your places it would be the same thing, but let's assume that was the only problem that you wanted to solve in a certain way. So what you first to do is build a model to test that hypothesis. Like if you want to test if a website offering notes to engineering students makes sense, first don't make a website. Just put it on a drive and share it on a WhatsApp group. See if people will share or not. If people share the link organically and you see, okay, my link went to someone which I don't even know, that means there is a demand for that thing. Once you have demand, make a very quick draft of that website on a piece of pen and paper. Okay, this is how the website will look like. This is what will be there. There will be a download button. There will be this, etc., and go out and ask people. Okay, fine. What kind of feedback do you have for this website? And if 70% plus give you 70% is again a heuristic number, but then again, this is the obvious number in which you can understand that, okay, most of the people actually find value. So that means your first part, that you actually have something worthwhile to solve for, that takes place. So you have identified the problem. Ki haan yaar, problem to hai and there's a demand for it. The next part is, after you've identified the problem, what next? Ab kya karna hai? The next part is, you have to define user actions which you intend for folks to do with the product. What I mean by that is, if you go to an app and do some random action, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're using the product. Like if you go to the login page and start just clicking on login and not using the core function. If you go to ClearTrip and just put your names in the profile page, that is also something that you're doing with something with the product. But that's not the core intent of the product. The core intent of the product is to get a train ticket or a flight ticket booked. Similarly, for your website, the core intent is people should be able to view the notes. People should be able to download the notes. People should be able to give feedback on the notes. Okay, whether the notes were useful, were they not useful. Now, these three are core actions. But if once you define an action, how will you measure it? Like it is easy to say, logon ko dekhna chahiye. My notes should be visible to everyone. But how do you know that people are actually watching it or not? So what you will do at that point is you will put some analytics around it and you will see, okay, number of people who came on my website were like 100. And out of those 100 people, 70 people downloaded the note. So that's a metric for me. Metric is the way you measure success. Like another example that I would give you is, for you, how do you define a good student from a bad student. I don't typically believe in the same structure, but then again, that is how the Indian education system works. Is that जब जिसका GPA 9 plus आता है, he gets a A plus grade. So that's a metric. So if somebody is a 6-pointer, he's typically an average student. If somebody is a 9-pointer, he's a good student. So that's a metric. Similarly, you would define metrics for your product. Okay, this is the prototype, and how do I identify this prototype is actually helping people is by defining certain metrics which I can measure. The second metric can be how many people actually gave you feedback divided by the number of people who viewed. The third metric can be, okay, what was the quality of the feedback? How many people rated it 8 plus out of 10? So once you define those metrics, you can define the success of the product. It is very similar to how you define success in a particular subject in a term. It is by getting a GPA. Similarly, the success of the product is defined by the metrics that you define on which success has to be measured. So first, identified the problem, made some mocks for it, got a sense of demand. Second part, defined the core actions, like I want the people to download the notes, view the notes, give feedback. And the third part is identify metrics through which you can actually figure out that whether my product is successful or not. So that's the second part. The third part, ab metrics bhi ho gaya, problem bhi ho gaya. What next? So the next part is based on those metrics, you try to understand, okay, now if I have to get a good GPA, again an analogy, what do you have to do? You have to study. You have to study every day. So it's more like a feature. Similarly, if you want to improve the experience of your product, you have to understand, okay, this metric might be moved by if I have a mobile version of my website, if people can access the website on a mobile platform. Why? Because there might be a possibility that there might be 60% of the students who have laptops, but 40% of the students don't. So they can use and everybody has a smartphone these days. So they would be able to see the website on a mobile phone. So if you make the website mobile friendly, your first metric would move, more people will visit your website. The second metric can be improved by how many people can you put a download button on the homepage, so that you know that the core intent of the website is to download notes. If you put a button on top of the website, a lot of people will start clicking on the button. The third thing can be, okay, if I put a banner on the website saying that these are the notes for the next midterm, people will start clicking on the banner. So you have identified those metrics. Now the second step is identify features which can improve those metrics. Like you define a feature set. Okay, this is the next thing that I'll build in my website. This is the next thing, and I will consistently keep doing it. Once you have defined the core feature set, you ship out an V1. What I mean by the first version of your prototype or the first version of your product, and then the same cycle repeats. This cycle, what happens is you go to people, ask them, are you finding value? Are you able to do what you intend to? They'll give you feedback. Again, the same loop starts. They again give you feedback. You again build. You track your metrics. Again build. Consistently keep doing it. It might take you 1 month. You might ship out a V2, then a V3, then a V4, until you reach V5, where most of the people, out of the 100 odd people, 90 people say, okay, now I can do whatever you intend and whatever I wanted on your website. I think the note-taking prototype is completely done. Then it became a product. And that is when you can also say that your product has reached product market fit. Yep. In a nutshell, product management is the art of finding solutions to core user pain problems in a scalable way. The method is simple. Identify a problem which you can relate to. Again, very, very core. Do a small proof of concept with around 30, 40 odd people. It's very simple. Class jate ho, class mein jaake ask people who you don't know. Typically don't ask people who you know, because they already know that you're working. They have a bias in their mind. Ask people who don't know. Do a small POC. If 70% people say, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, make a small mock around it, make a little design on a piece of paper and say, okay, this is what I want to make. This is what I want to make. Once they say, okay, this also makes sense, try to identify, okay, this is, now people are saying that this, what are the metrics through which I can measure? What are the intended actions that I want people to take on my product? That it can be download notes, it can be do something else, it can be to view a certain page. Okay, now how do I measure those things? Then you identify metrics which can be measured, and you try to then you start building. Okay, now these are the things that I need to build in the V1. These are the metrics. This is how we can measure it. I ship out a V1. You ship out a V1, take it to the very same people, tell them to give feedback. They'll give you feedback. Test, repeat till you achieve product market fit. This way, you're not solving user problems, but solving ecosystem problems. So unless your product, and I repeat it again, unless your product solves problems for a large enough user base, it's just a prototype. It's not a product. You have not innovated anything. Till there are people who are outside your circle of influence and they say they are deriving value from it. Like, let me give you another example. Do you know folks at WhatsApp? You don't, right? But you still use WhatsApp. So they don't even know who you are, but you're still using the product. So yani you are deriving value. So when there is a large enough set of people who don't know who created the product and yet they are using the product, then you understand that that has moved from a prototype to a product stage. This way you make people happy, and the core aspect from the core aspect of feature development. And again, the three parts that I keep repeating upon. If you want to make a great product which people derive value from, first is focus on value, which solves a core problem. Second is focus on simplicity, that it should be very easy to use. Third is it should be very happy. It should be very wonderful to use. It can be a good UI. It can be anything. Like why do you see that websites of Harvard University and Stanford University have very great UIs? But on the contrary, Indian websites typically are not up to the same standard. So you would ideally want to visit those websites, right? So that is where the third part comes. It's the joy of building a product. So this is in a nutshell the product building process, and it can be applied to any field like education, transportation, hyperlocal, whatever problem you are solving in your life. It is there. On a side note, I would also say the core three things for you to identify problems is you should have passion. You should be very objective. You should look at things, what people are doing, and how should I really identify, okay, this is a problem. Like जब आप घर पे होते हो, when you are at home, you might see that your father is ordering medicines. So what you do is you download a medicine app nowadays and get medicines for him. So you keenly looked at what are the problems that people face. So you should be passionate. The second part is you should be very, very objective. If you have a bias, like if 10 people are saying, okay, this should be done, not necessarily. So you should test. You should keep testing, take feedback, remove bias from your life. And the third part is you should be very accessible. If you are accessible, people will give you true feedback. If you are not accessible to people, like people cannot talk to you, then there's a problem. So as a problem solver, you should be very humble and you should be able to look at the world in a very seemingly meaningful way. And the last part is, thank you very much, guys. I think I covered most of the bits in the last 15 odd slides. Now I am open to questions. Feel free to ask. Yep.
Thanks, Shravan. I think that was a really informative session, and I'm sure everyone learned something new. So we'll open up to questions. If anyone has a question, do raise your hand, and we'll unmute you, and you can ask whatever doubts you have.
Yep. Go for it, Prayag. You can go in go for it, Prayag. Yeah.
Hello, Shravan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Hi, good evening. Yep.
Yeah. So my question is like, if there is a tangible product, it's very easy to empathize and get easy to understand the pain points.
Sure.
Right. But when there is an intangible product, like as you're talking about, I think so this is more on the service note. How should we, look or have a perspective towards empathy when building such kind of products?
Got it. So, Prayag, first of all, it's a good question. So what I would say is that, see, first of all, you have to understand what is empathy. From a product standpoint, what is empathy? Empathy basically means that the access of the product should be widely accessible to a large set of people. What I mean by that is, let me ask you a very, very fundamental question. There were multiple messengers in the market, but why did WhatsApp become successful? WhatsApp became successful because it was very, very easy to use. And the ease of access is the empathy to the user, that even your grandmother can use WhatsApp, or even a 3-year-old kid can use WhatsApp. Similar with YouTube. So the products which typically fundamentally try to enable themselves to a largest user set are the most empathetic products. Like probably your sister who is 6-year-old or 7-year-old might not be able to use Excel, but she is able to use WhatsApp. So that product is not really built for that audience. And the second part that you asked is, there are some intangible products. See, unless there is value, a product cannot be intangible. It has to have some value for some version, like some target set. There cannot be an intangible. What I mean by intangible is, maybe that value which is intangible is of value to them. Like, let me give you another example. Probably starting a website on epilators. Epilators is something that women use. It's not valuable to you. It's intangible to you, but it's tangible to that particular target set. So the target sets that you are eyeing for, a product will always have tangible value. Always have tangible value. And if you want to really incorporate that for a large enough user set, then you have to fundamentally look at, okay, how do I make it simple to use for that particular target set? And that is where empathy rolls in. Empathy basically means, can the very core features of my product be used by everyone? If you have solved that problem, then you are already empathizing with the largest of the user set. Like if Khan Academy is currently used by college grads also, and also for kids also, then they are empathetic to that audience. But if the core audience is not able to use the product and only a segment of that audience is able to use the product, then there is no empathy around it. Yeah. So I hope that answered the question. The first part is, for the target set which you're building, the product is always tangible. And secondly, if you want to build deep empathetic products, the second part is that you will have to functionally make it very simple to use. Empathy results in simplicity. That's the simple part of it. Yeah. Cool. I hope I answered the question.
Thanks, Parag. Hope that answered your question. We have another question from Nishant. Nishant, go ahead.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Nishant. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. Sir, my question is, if we share a website to know the demand of a product, and later if we find that there is a good demand,
sure,
and we have launched our product, then how is it is going to be a competition, sir? How do we gain profit?
Let me re-understand your question. Can you repeat it again? Sorry, I probably lost you in between. Can you just kind of repeat it again?
Yes, sir. Sir, if we share a website to know the demand of a certain product,
sure,
then we have launched our product.
Okay. Got your point. So you're saying that you might reveal the product to the competition, and then there will be a possibility that somebody might copy your product and you would never be able to make profit out of it. That's what you're asking. Is that the question? Got it. So at the very core, you have to understand that no product, no idea is IP'd. Ideas cannot be IP'd. They cannot be intellectually bought. The product has to be defensible in a certain way. What I mean by that is defensible is that if you make a website which is solving a common user problem, then you should bank on certain variables. It's a very interesting question, so I would tell you in a more deeper way. See, what is the value? Why do you use Amazon more than Flipkart? Or probably why do you use Netflix? Give me a second. Sorry. Yeah. Why do you use Netflix? Then typically probably any other like ZTV. The reason is the core defensibility, even though both platforms offer the same thing. Netflix has more personalization. So their moat is personalization. So every product has a moat. Moat basically means what is that one value, what really differentiates the product. Like in between Uber and Ola, there is no differentiation. The only difference is that, give me a second, I'm just getting a call. Sorry, guys. Extremely sorry. Yeah. So you have to understand the moat of the product. What is the one core thing that really differentiates your product? For Uber and Ola, it's price. If Uber is less expensive, You take an Uber. Typically, experience is also there, but that really doesn't matter. But let me give you another example of defensibility of a product. Why don't you use any tool other than Excel, even though there are hundreds of spreadsheet tools in the market? Because the core point of using an Excel is that it is very easy to understand, and it is functionally very, very relevant now. The other spreadsheet tools don't have the same functions. They are not vertically integrated with Windows. So the way that I would answer your question, Nishant, is that you have to identify that one variable. Like if you're making let's assume a website, the similar example that I gave, in which notes are there, you would only allow people who are from NIT Warangal to download. So that might be a defensibility. Or you would only allow people who log in into your website. Once you have credentials of the website, you can tell people, okay, you can download the notes only if you pay. Nobody can copy, or you can IP your notes. Like nobody can typically try to copy that out. So basically you can IP your platform. That is another way to do it. And so whenever you build a product, you try to make that one or two things very specific to your product, which are moat, which nobody can copy. So I hope that is where the core value also gets differentiated. And that is where you should really think of. Yeah. So I hope, Nishant, that kind of answers your question. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. But in a way, we are creating a competition for ourselves by this.
That will always happen, na, Nishant. Whenever there's a product in the market, everybody would see that. You would not want to restrict it to a certain base. How will you scale the business? How will you scale the product? If Uber would have thought of that, if Ola would have thought of that, then Uber would never have been in the market. Ola would have never become bigger. Why are there so many different products which you use? You use YouTube also, you use Netflix also, you use Amazon Prime also, all do the same thing. So that is bound to happen. But you don't have to get afraid of that. What you have to fundamentally understand is there is something unique to my product which nobody can do. And that is where you have to focus. If you can do that, like education mein kitni sari companies hai. Byju is there is Vedantu, there is an academy, there are so many products. If Byju would have never released his product thinking of the competition, then it would have never scaled. But we know that our IP is our content, that our content is very specific, very unique, which nobody can copy. So you have to identify your moat. Moat basically means the core value of your product, which nobody can copy. So you have to do that. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Cool. Yeah.
Thanks, Nishant. Shravan, we have a question on chat before I move on to the other questions. Nitin asks, what is the process after receiving feedback and implementing those suggestions onto the product? And what if the feedback introduces verticals that are too difficult or costly to implement?
Got it. So, hey, Nitin. So, Nitin, basically, the process is very similar. I told you it's a repetitive process. The first part is that once you get feedback, you try to implement it. That is, and you asked a very pertinent question. That's why I want to kind of come to that part. The process is very simple. You take feedback, you incorporate feedback, incorporate. It's a loop. But the second question is very relevant. What if the feature that somebody is suggesting is very it's very cost intensive? Like if somebody is saying build a personalization engine for me, that makes a lot of value. So at that point of time, the final part in the revenue funnel the product funnel you saw, the revenue wala part comes in, where you say, okay, if you're deriving value, if you want these features, why don't you pay 50 rupees for it? And if they actually derive value, then at scale, then that is when the business model of the product comes in. That there is a business model to that particular product. And that is why most of the products are not free to use. And whichever are free to use, they make money the other way around. Like Google is not free to use. If that is something that you believe, it is free to use for you, but they make a hell lot of money from advertisers because they have a lot of data from your side. So that is the second part. If you have to really, really profitably build a product, then you will have to understand at what time you have to monetize the product. Like I have given 10 free things like Medium. If you go to Medium as a website, there are 3 stories that you can read free. But after that, you have to pay $5. And you cannot use it. So you have to really understand that at what point the user is mature that he will pay for the product. And if he's really has value for the product, he'll start paying for it. So that the one way to getting it implemented is create a business model and start making money out of it. And the other way is obviously to raise funds. If somebody is generous enough or IIT is generous enough to tell you, okay, we'll give you more money, why don't you implement it? So, but the more sustainable way is after a certain point, you should move towards a sustainable business model, which generates revenue for you and you make money out of it and use that money to build your product and make profit out of it. Yeah. I hope I answered the question, Nathan. Yeah.
Great. We have another question from Anurag. He says, what kind of pressure does a product manager get from the company or from upper management?
Cool, yeah. Yeah. So Anurag, it is a very interesting question. See, it's more about, I think you have to fundamentally understand product manager is not a role. I don't think of it as a role. I think it's a mindset of basically understanding user problems. So you have to really focus on what is bringing value to the life of the user. You are only loyal to the user. You're not loyal to your company. You're not loyal to your CEO. If you are loyal to the user, you're automatically loyal to all of those. Those are byproducts. So if you know that, okay, these 1 lakh people use my product and I can build something which really, really improves their life in 10%, then automatically the company will align there, because if their life actually gets improved, they give you more money. They give you more money, the company wants to make money. So if you are really loyal to value, then there is actually no pressure at all. There can be implementation pressure ki kitni jaldi karna hai, you want to do it in 1 month or 2 months. Those are execution pressures. But product managers are not tactical guys. Execution is for tactical guys. There are product managers are strategic guys. They want to understand from a strategic point of view, what is the next thing that I should do which gives people value. So if you are very loyal to the user and you try to give value to the user, that's enough. Be loyal to the user, be honest to the user, build for the user, and if it's a scalable company, everything else will align. So in a typical way, yes, it's a very interesting role in which you talk to a lot of folks, but the loyalty is only to the user. So once you are loyal to the user, there is no pressure at all. You actually enjoy doing it. So if you tell me the volume of hours, I spend like 10 to 12 hours every day, but I enjoy doing it because that's something I'm passionate about. So I like doing that job. The only time when your job becomes pressure is when you don't enjoy your job. So that is something. So that's what I keep speaking about, a bit of philosophy, that there are no joyful or there are no good or bad people in this world. There are only joyful and miserable people in this world. If you are joyful enough, whatever you do in your life, you'll be happy about it and you will be passionate about it. But if you are miserable, even the best thing that comes to you really doesn't happen that way. So yeah, thoda sa philosophical ho gaya, but then again, that's how things are.
Yeah, great. We have another question from Asad. I think it's referring to the section about product market fit. He asks,
Sure.
if the product is oriented towards businesses, that is, it's a B2B company,
Correct.
how do you go about the product market fit, and do the same principles apply here as well?
Yes. So Asad, you have to understand that B2B, B2C, B2B2C, B2C2C, these are all dimensions of businesses, but first principles remain the same. So even if you're building a B2B, then you're loyal to the client that you have. And if you build for the client, if you give them value, it's the same thing. Salesforce is a product company. Salesforce is a completely B2B company. It's a CRM company. It's a $1 billion company. Similarly, there are multiple B2B companies. Like if you would have gone on websites, you would have seen Intercom. Intercom is a B2B company. So what I'm trying to put across to you is the principles of product market fit are completely same. There is absolutely no change. If somebody is going to tell you that there is a change, there isn't. The only difference is the life cycle might change. Like for a client, you might build a feature in 7 days. For B2C companies, you might ship a feature in the next 2 hours. It can happen that way. Or for a client, there might be a big enough requirement which can give you a bigger deal size. But for a customer, it might be just a small login button. So the principal way of product market fit is the same, that you're loyal to the user. The user doesn't necessarily have to be an individual. It can be a group of individuals. It can be the same thing. But the fundamental principle of product market fit, that giving value, taking feedback, consistently improving till the user finds it an optimal value, is the same. And that is where there is enough demand for it. It's absolutely the same. But very interesting question. I would say it's just a way of looking at different dimensions of industries. That's how it is. But as a product manager, nothing changes in the first principles approach. Yeah.
Okay. Prerna asks, can you suggest any resources or books to acquire more knowledge? Anything that you'd recommend?
Sure. Hey, Prerna. So first of all, if you want to read, I would suggest a very interesting book to you. The book is The Lean Product Playbook. It's a book by Dan Olson. I would just mention it in the chat for everyone to see. Lean Product Playbook by Dan Olson. And if you want to start in your product journey, if product management seems very interesting to you, I think it's private host. You can share it across to the entire group. The second thing is you can also look at this book called Decode and Conquer. This will help you for product management interviews. And if you want to read more about how you should think, there is a book called Leaders Start with Why by Simon Sinek. And that is how. These three are the initial starting points. But anyway, if anybody wants to kind of reach back to me, I will put across my email ID, and you guys can reach out to me, and I will try to get back to you whenever I get time. But a starting point would be these three books. This will help you to move into your product journey. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And to all the participants, we'll be sharing whatever resources that Shravan shares. So we'll get that across to you. Bhagya asks, in the very context of IP being the most important element for a company, how are, say, food delivering brands competing? And if the only USP is, say, fast deliveries, that's not something that they can control. So how do they compete?
Very interesting question. So the USP is not fast deliveries. It's as simple as that. So the USP is personalized food, the product experience. Like Swiggy doesn't only offer you fast deliveries. Agreed. They're not under their control. They offer you better personalization. They recommend whenever you have to take a biryani, they offer you the best restaurants, which are one click away. They offer you the best restaurant experience. So it's a group of multiple things, and delivery is one factor of that. Yeah. Basically, if you can give them, if they can give you a faster delivery in rain, obviously you would switch to Swiggy. But there are multiple variables like the product experience itself, the restaurant experience, the customer experience, the delivery experience, the refund experience, hundreds of things. So why do you feel uncomfortable doing a payment on a government website, even though they have the payment gateway integrated? The reason is you feel yaar mera refund nahi aayega. What if the payment failed? But on the contrary, you are very comfortable doing the same payment on a US website. It's very simple because you know they have a support system which can give you the refund in the next 30 probably 7 days or 5 days, and they're very loyal to it. So absolutely. So answering the very same question that you asked, so the USP is not fast deliveries. The IP is the entire experience. IP doesn't necessarily have to be one thing. It can be group of 5 things. But in a collective, it's one thing. Like you can say my product experience is my IP. The product experience might have 5 different aspects to it. Personalization, onboarding, experience, refund experience, customer experience. In total, it's a product experience. So yeah. Yep.
Great. Moving on, Prishti also has another question. Being in college, how do we transition or go deeper into product with a strategic mindset and not as a developer?
Got it. So I think what I would recommend you to do, guys, is whenever you have to think of a think of product, first of all, become very passionate. Start reading. As when I was in college, I used to read everything and anything besides the college curriculum. So I used to read religion, philosophy. You have to be curious enough to know the world. If you only do things which make you happy, then it's desire. So the one thing that I want to keep talking about is desire is personal, vision is all inclusive. So you have to understand that you have to look at the world from multiple facets, from a psychological facet, from a sociological facet, from a mathematical facet, from a philosophical facet, from a logical facet, from an emotional facet. And when you see the world from different dimensions, you will be able to identify curious problems. Okay, these are the problems. Then once you have identified a problem, start working on the problem by yourself. Like create a small prototype, write a small document. Okay, if I would have to solve this problem, this is how I would have tried to solve it. This will bring a certain element of practice in you, and it will help you create a product portfolio. And this will also showcase your acumen. So tomorrow, if you're applying somewhere, you would send across these documents. These 5 things I've really worked on, and I want to send it across. And this is how I think. So the other person will understand that she's not only a college student, she also has some product acumen. She or he, for that matter. The second part is I would recommend all of you to start writing. If you start writing, it will give you a sense of prioritization, but keep a limit to your writing. ऐसा नहीं कि तुम्हें essay लिखना है. It's not a 2000 word essay. Give yourself a limit, like I want to write in like 500 characters. and try to write, ki, okay, if I had to express this idea in 500 characters, how I am going to write it. The reason for that is the other person will, if you are able to do that, subconsciously you'll become a better prioritizer, because the other person in an interview will not give you more than 1 or 2 minutes to explain your idea. And if he loses interest in 1 or 2 minutes, you are already going to screw the interview, even if it goes on for 1 hour. So build a sense of prioritization. The third part is stay away from confirmation bias. Just don't take what Shravan also says on face value. Go and do your research. If Shravan is saying this is a nice book, this is how you should look at value, go and do your research. Get enough inputs to make an informed choice in life, because one of the important things to become a great PM is to be objective as anything. Because if you are not objective, if you build on a bias, like मैं अगर अपने 10 दोस्तों से ही पूछ लूं कि okay, does this website make sense? So they will only say yes, yeah, you are my friend more often than not. But if you have to be objective, you have to take positive as well as negative criticism. So be humble, be humorous. That is something that I would say. 3 things. 1, create a portfolio for yourself. 2, start writing. 3, be open to feedback. Be objective as anything. Yeah. I hope I answered, and that will bring strategy in your life. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, I'm sure that's great advice. I'm sure everyone's will probably try and adopt that. I don't see any questions as of now. If anyone else has any questions, please do raise your hand or put it in the chat. Okay, we have a question from Tanzila. She says, it is evident that there are so many startups or prototypes for more or the same problem statement. So how do you think you can make your product stand out from the crowd?
It's the same thing, Tansila. So what you will have to look at is what is your IP. So if you're building for the same problem, then obviously the only way you can compete is by giving a lower price. Like, how do Flipkart and Amazon compete? They compete on price. They compete on delivery availability. So there are 2 ways to do it. Either find something which is completely different about your product. If you're not, then you have to provide a better experience on the existing variables. Like, if price is something that is very high in the market, can you provide the service at a cheaper price? If you can't find something entirely different, if there is something entirely different, well and good. If not, then on the existing variables, you have to provide a 10x better experience. Like, availability might be one, price might be one, customer experience might be one. These are variables common to all companies, but you can do it 10x better. Another example that I can give you, if you do a train ticket on Ixigo and you do a train ticket on IRCTC, it's the same thing. Yep. So it's not the same thing. Sorry, it's not the same thing. IRCT is far poor and Ixigo is far better. So I never go to IRCTC anymore. I go to Ixigo if I have to do a train ticket for someone. Yeah. So either build something completely different or improve the existing experience by 10x. That's the only way. Yeah.
Adding on to that, I mean, I'm sure you can sort of elaborate better, but I think I've read about the 3 Ps, that is price, people, and the process, right? So,
yeah.
So what do you think about that in terms of the question that she asked?
Yeah, so process and price come very late. I think it's first about the people, because from people you derive value, and then you build for that value, you build a process. And if there is a good enough process, price will automatically be a byproduct of that process, because a process cannot be without a pricing strategy. So if you have the right price, but at the core, it is the value. Like, value nahi hoga, to whatever pricing strategy you put across doesn't really matter. Whatever process you put across, there has to be core value which solves the pain point for someone. Like, if a company like IRCTC or if a company like Duolingo asks you to pay $2 and you are learning a language at an amazing scale over there, it's not a big price for you. So price and process come later. I think the first part is you have to be for the people. You have to, and people can also have an internal locus of control or an external locus of control. What I mean by internal locus of control, are you building it for the closer set or you're building for the external set? So for both of them, you have to understand that it should provide enough value. So I would want to say that for me, it is always about the core value that you provide to the person or the user, and then the process and the price, everything trickles into the right format so that you can build a profitable and scalable business. Yeah.
Great. We have a couple more questions. One is from Anurag. He says, how do we as students from NIT Warangal get into product management, as companies that visit our college are focused on sales? And also,
Yeah.
do we need any technical knowledge to get into these roles? And can we grow from business development to further on product development?
So I think those are the same thing that I talked about. One, you make a product portfolio for yourself. Two, start building a great LinkedIn profile, start pushing out stuff. Third thing is that start working on case studies, which you can share across with most of the interviewers. That is, so in product, there is no technical knowledge that you need unless and until you are applying to a very specific company like Nutanix, if it's a SaaS product or something like that. But more often than not, anybody from any background can get in. So it's the same thing. You have to build a portfolio for yourself, which can showcase your product acumen. And the second part is you should be very, very tempered towards being very prioritized in life. Like, do you have some semblance of value? Like, what are the three things that you should do which make the experience great? So start with building a profile, start writing, build a great LinkedIn profile. The fourth part that I would say is start doing some interesting projects which you can leverage across in your resume, saying that this is something that I did. It can be pro bono, it can be free of cost. Gain experience, and I think that is the only way you move into product. At least that's what I did. Yeah. So do we have any final questions?
Yeah, I think a couple more questions. One we have is from Vivek. He says, in the context of Byju as a company, it started off with an idea, but what had more impact on the scaling? Was it advertising or referral?
I think initially it was referral, but later on it became a combination of referral and advertising. I think without having an intrinsic pull to the product, no company can scale this big. There has to be an intrinsic pull. Advertising only supplements the scale. That's to answer your question in a nutshell. Yeah.
Okay, great. I hope that answers your question, Vivek. I don't think we have any other questions.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll end it there. So first of all, thanks a lot to Shravan for taking time out of your busy schedule. I'm sure everyone found whatever information you provided and the answers you gave very useful. And thanks a lot to all the participants as well for joining. Hope you found it useful, and all the resources that Shravan has shared with us, we'll be sharing with you shortly. And if possible, some of the recording as well. Shravan, any closing remarks? And then we can close
the only thing, guys, stay curious. I think the only way you become better people in life is when you start expanding your vision of doing things. Stay detached from outcomes. What I mean by that is, trust me. When I was a college student, I always used to think if I do a certain job, if I earn a certain amount of money, but it's the passion that really makes you very happy in life. So be true to your passions. Try to solve problems at the very core and try to learn more about the world. And do whatever you like. Just stay true to your passion. A passion really means that whatever you like, you are bereft of outcomes. You should never be tied to outcomes ki main itne paise kama lunga, ya this is what I'll do or this is what I'll that. You should believe in the process. If you really want to become a great product manager, that is something you should totally do in your life, and you should start exploring more and more things in life. And that is exactly more books, more experiences, gather more experiences. So as a parting note, just be passionate and compassionate. Those are the two things. And secondly, start creating a profile for yourself, and that can start with by building some sort of a portfolio for yourself where you can showcase your acumen. So thank you very much, guys. It was lovely talking to all of you. Those were very interesting questions. I had fun. And anyway, I have put across my email ID. You can reach out to me on my email ID. You can reach out to my LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, I'll try to reach back to you in whatever way I can. Thank you very much once again. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Shravan. I think that's a good note to end on. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. And on behalf of Innovation Garage and Sri Hari Rao, sir, we thank everyone for attending. And yeah, hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shravan.